Welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. We are here at the ICFAI Business School in Hyderabad, talking to students, educationists, experts, entrepreneurs, asking them, how can today's youth be made more employable? What are those skill sets which are needed in a digital native world? What is the role of academia? What is the role that entrepreneurs in the entrepreneurial ecosystem plays when it comes to ensuring that students are employable? All of those big picture questions being posed to our panelists. We're also taking questions from some of the students that you're seeing behind me, asking the most pertinent questions. Let me dive right in and introduce my panelists. Acharya, founder CEO, Mapmygenome. Chandrasekhar Sripada, Professor of Organisational Behaviour Practice at ISB. Murali Bukkapatnam, founder CEO, Volksy Technologies, Trustee, Thai Global. Professor K.S. Venugopal, Director, ICFAI Business School, Hyderabad. So let me dive right in and perhaps first off ask our entrepreneurs to very briefly introduce the businesses that you run and own. I want to come to you first, Anu.
Hi, I'm Anu Acharya. I'm the founder and CEO of Mapmygenome. And prior to this, I also ran a company called Awesome Bio from the year 2000 when the human genome was completed. What we are currently doing is mostly offering both consumer and preventive genomics as well as clinical genomics for consumers as well as patients. Murali?
Hi, good morning. This is Murali Bukkapatnam. I'm a career entrepreneur. Used to run a software services company in Washington, D.C. Moved back to India in 2008. Started a hospitality venture. And then in 2012, got into the skilling, worked with different states in India, government, on the employability and the skilling. Now I've gone back to my software services firm called AHEM, where we take the young students and try to get into the product software engineering side of things. Not the regular software development side, but the product software engineering, where I see India as the potential to go to the next 20 years. So that's what I do.
Thank you and welcome to our entrepreneurs. I want to come to you, Professor Venugopal, and address today's topic of discussion and ask if you can talk specifically about how your institute is enabling students to gain those skill sets which are going to be crucial once they enter the workplace. Just the top 2 or 3 things, perhaps.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for this opportunity. At the ICFAI Business School, we have close to about 5,500 students. In the undergrad level, it's about 3,000 students, and at the MBA level, we have about 2,400 students. And the executive MBA, another 100 students. How we maintained our differentiation over the years is something very unique. And we have hit the balance between the knowledge and the practical requirements of industry by integrating pedagogy with a host of curricular and co-curricular activities. We have a high emphasis on soft skills, business communication, and our unique methodology that we adopt is the case method, which we pioneered way back in 2005. All our courses are now driven by the case method.
Thank you so much for that. Professor Chandra, I want to come to you and ask you perhaps, let's say an unconventional question, and this is something we're discussing offline. What is the role of education? Is it to make students industry ready, or is that the role of industry itself? And is there an ideal sort of meeting point?
So, best of wisdom says that the purpose of education is to make people life ready. Industry is just one part of it. To be life ready and to be work ready, there are fundamental foundational skills that are required. They are largely called, critical thinking, integrative thinking, structured analysis, communication, the ability to work with people. There are some foundational skills. and plus subject matter knowledge or domain expertise. Education at its various stages should, in various mixes, should increase gradually the domain expertise up to a certain master's level and keep on adding and blending other life skills and job skills to that. It's only when that wholesome preparation happens, education serves its best purpose. So the summary is, to think that education is only to skill is to take away two things: the primary role of education from education, and take away the role of skilling from skilling. I think we have two interesting stages. Education building the foundation to receive skilling in a manner that would make you industry ready.
Okay. Murali, I know you have a counter view to that, and I'm interested to hear that.
I mean, I don't have a counter view, but I have a view, right? See, I think as we all grow up, as kids, we all learn, tables, multiplication tables and all that stuff. That's, for me, is an education which is necessary, right? For us to do derivatives, for us to do integrations or the calculus which. But when you go into the deeper derivatives which we learn from a mathematics point of view, how many of us get to use it? So maybe unless very few students who get into the financial modeling or typical services side of it, that at a deeper level, we don't use it.
Would you want to add to that, Professor Venugopal? Because your students are training for these professional courses.
Yes.
Right? And great that you're building that foundation. But then where are they going to acquire those skill sets? Because like industries like ours, for instance, expect students to come in having those skill sets, but because no one has the time to really train you. So then what happens?
Absolutely. So the pandemic has come as a very good opportunity for us. I mean, the last 3 years, we have invested a lot of time in looking back at our curricula, and also have had active engagement with industry, looking at what is their immediate requirements. Because industry, as I see, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, is looking at a very low kind of a lead time for students to quickly join the work and not take months together to learn the nuances of the job.
And my question to you, Anu, then, and I want to talk about the NEP. And NEP has recommended that vocational skills are started really early, as young as class 5 or 6, I understand. So how does that perhaps fit in with some of the views that we're seeing on the panel? And do you think that's a good move? And young children and young students are being made industry ready.
So I would argue, I think I'm more closer maybe to what Professor Chandra was saying, is that education, I think by itself should be a process to make you learn to think, right? I mean, to give an example, I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in physics. My future has been is in genomics over the last 23 years. So I think the ability to be able to learn how to think and learn how to learn is more important, and especially so for the newer generation, because you don't know what your future is going to look like, and neither did we, for that matter. But I think today's future is going to be even more drastically changed, because you have so much of AI, so much of this thing coming in, that you're actually not just competing among yourself, you're competing with machines. In a sense. So I think that your distinction, or in terms of, what we are looking at from the new education policy, some parts of it I like, which is saying that, you have the flexibility to choose. For instance, I think I didn't have the ability. I did sciences, so I didn't have much of, except English, you didn't have much choices. But when I look at what my daughter is doing, I think today she can choose between visual art and psychology, mathematics and something else. And I think that makes you, in many ways, allows you that freedom to be able to pursue the passion that you have. And I think education, for the sake of learning, if you learn, for instance, how people think, you learn how design works, I think some of it is more understanding the basic fundamental knowledge. And I think once you have that, the world is at your doorstep, you can learn a lot of things. So I think that is definitely there. Vocational training, I think for certain kinds of job, very important, right? You also want to make sure, I think we discussed the dignity of labor and all that. I think vocational training is great. But I don't expect, for instance, in a field like ours, in genomics, we help some of the people to develop courses, because the world is changing so quickly. It's not possible for an educational institution to be able to be completely at par with what we are doing today in genomics, because things are changing so rapidly.
Sure.
So that's
Sure.
what I would think.
I'm going to take a quick break. On that note, we'll continue bringing you our campus shoot that we call the Hangout from Hyderabad back in just a moment. Just stay tuned. Welcome back with us here on IFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow, Season 11.
There is only 12% of women in manufacturing industry who are the entrepreneurs. And that shook me off, honestly, because if I am coming back to India, I want to have a pillar from my own country. So I would also want to ask all the panelists, what advice do you give me personally? Do I come back to India where I see a lot of employees, women, but I do not see entrepreneurs in the top management?
You already are thinking in the right direction.
Good question.
So first thing
Anu,
is,
if you want to
why would you even go abroad? So you don't have to come back, you just stay. There is a lot that's happening in this country which is not happening elsewhere. And the time is now, this is Amrit Kal, as we were discussing. This is the time now. A lot of women entrepreneurship development programs are happening. Think of a good killing business idea and do all the other things that we talked about. And you will get lots of funding also these days. It depends on what, you don't have to go abroad for that. I mean, you can go otherwise, but I'm just saying. So the simple advice is stay with that idea. Not for reason that women have to be entrepreneurs, but for the reason that entrepreneurs can also be women. And you understand the point? The entrepreneur is not a male stereotype. I could be as good as anybody.
Sure.
I think that's a great start point.
So I would say that, you mentioned all the constraints you have, but you also have a lot of new things that people did not have 50 years ago, which is, you now have extraterrestrial. You might be finding that over the next few years, you'll have Mars as a possible market, right? But I'm just saying that things change. And I think we shouldn't compare what you're today with what was happening about a decade ago, because things are totally different. But the second is that it is true that it'll be tough. But I think you need to add to the numbers rather than say that, should I come back because the numbers are not good enough? And I think that, what our previous generations did for us, I think hopefully our job is to make sure that we change those statistics and not say that I'll stay somewhere else because, the statistics are not good enough. So come back and do what you need to do.
Mahima, first and foremost, I strongly recommend you to go, right? I mean, I beg to differ with Professor, but see, unless you go to another country, another place, expose yourself, you don't understand the differences between the multiple facets of learning. You will find those avenues, you will find those ventures for you to come back to India, right? So don't go anywhere or don't do anything with a preconceived notions. Remember, life is transient. As long as you are welcoming the transient nature into your life. I sound like a preacher, I sound like a spiritual guru, but that's not the intent. But be true to yourself, right? Then things will follow.
But I've heard it said that entrepreneurship is also a spiritual journey
Absolutely.
as much as it is
Absolutely, 100%, no doubt
just
about
a side note. I'm told we have time for maybe one or two more questions, actually. Here.
So, good morning to all the panel present here. My name is Dhruv, and I'm currently pursuing BBA, and I'm in my second year. So, my question is that, what do you think in today's era about the youth? Are they confused or are they confident about the startup culture in the world? Not only in India, but in the world.
India has come from an economy of scarcity to economy of fulfillment to economy of abundance. You guys are all from the economy of abundance, right? So you guys are at level with any developed nation thinking process or the thought process. So you are absolutely confident in your nature, in your thought process. There's no doubt about it. But how do you use that thought process for either for the nation building or creating employment or to be entrepreneurially strong in your mindset when you are an employee in an organization, right? That is where you need to change gears a little bit and use your confidence, right?
All right. I'm going to take closing comments at this point. Thank you for all the questions. And I want to come to you first, Anu, and this was something that one of the students asked, and we were discussing this offline, about being a woman in what you said. You've heard comments recently, non-traditional industries, whatever that is supposed to mean. Given that we have so many students in today's audience who are female, how do you handle these questions that come to you, and what is your advice? And is there an easy solution to say why perhaps female students don't continue into the higher levels when it comes to more technical, scientific kind of industries and companies?
So I think there are 2-3 aspects, right? One is that, and I've mentioned this, that sometimes if women are not paid as high as the men, that becomes a problem, because if you're a family, then you're probably looking at a return on investment, and therefore, the person who gets the higher pay will go and work and the other person doesn't, right? So that is one big problem, that there is no equity of pay. The second is the lack of recognition. So I think one is that sometimes the loudest person gets recognized, and a lot of times women don't tend to be loud, or by loud I mean have their presence felt. So I think that is a skill that maybe many of us should learn to inculcate, because I think when you don't get recognized, then you probably don't want to be part of an organization, you drop out. So I think what we are seeing is in 10th grade, 12th grade, even up to college level, I think we are starting to see the numbers quite high.
Fantastic. Murali, I want to come to you, and you were talking about the fact that you had the opportunity to have that international exposure. Perhaps 2 or 3 things that you think that could be emulated here in India, going by the experience that you've seen?
The huge stark difference is how professors and the teachers work or function. I went for my master's in computer science there. My master's program is all driven through research. And the biggest mistake which I did was go right after my undergrad. And I had no work experience here. And you were asked to research, 0, right? It took me almost 2 semesters, right, to get used to that thought process or the way of learning. And the ability of the professors to work with you, either the number of credit hours which you can take, and mold you to what it could be at this thing.
All our conversations today, I think, have been more relevant to students who are attending, prestigious universities and able to pay the kind of fees. Murali was also talking about the kind of fees that we see today. How can students who don't have access to institutes like the one we are at today, or to those higher education, are we talking in a bubble, is what I'm trying to understand?
Yeah, in a way, yes, because we are all listening to each other and creating echo chambers. There is a hard reality there, and there is lack of exposure. So the answer is not anything, it's multiple things that have to happen. First, we have to stop disconcentrating on the urban centers. We need to move some of the urban benefits back to the rural towns and create rural towns into viable economies. And there are many ways to do that. So one attempt the government is doing is actually to go and incentivize industries and jobs, etc., in the 2-tier and 3-tier cities. So that attempt should continue. We should build more and more of those.
Professor, I want to leave and give you the opportunity to leave us with the last word. If you had any advice for the students here today, as well as the ones who are going to be watching this show, one piece of advice.
Yeah. India is at the threshold. I mean, I don't want to sound too political here. We are at the threshold. World is looking at us. World is looking at India. And I would echo what Professor said a while ago. We don't need to go out. It is all here and it's happening. And why 5 trillion? We will be a 7 trillion economy if we are all putting our hands together. And I think institutions, not only like us, the ICFAI Business School, but institutions all over the country, about 1,000 universities, about 47,000 colleges, are there to build this emergent India, and we should be called as the developed country. And I think we are already on a firm footing. And I would look at this generation that's sitting in front of us. As we say, every generation has to be better than the previous generation. So I'm sure this generation has all that it takes.
All right. We are here in Hyderabad talking all things skilling and employability and how to ensure today's youth is skillable. What are those skill sets? Who's responsible for ensuring that India's youth have the skill sets? Whether it's the educational institutes or the corporates and the entrepreneurial ecosystem itself. Big picture questions which we have attempted to answer today. I'm going to be traveling to 20 such campuses across the country, speaking directly with students and entrepreneurs and educationists to try find answers to India's big questions. For tonight though, it's a wrap.